Ever get the feeling like you're being fed fake fruit when it comes to education? Like it looks like knowledge, it kind of feels like skills, but something's just missing.
I think I know what you mean.
Well, today's deep dive is really going to resonate with anyone who's ever felt that frustration.
Sounds intriguing.
We're going to Nepal through this really passionate blog post.
Oh, wow, Nepal.
Yeah. It's called, hold on, let's see if I can get this right.
Okay.
Okay, the title is 04 to 4 between 4. Day is Pammy, and I am. And I know I quiero el 5 días pagamos por embarana poco un pero que voy a que yo con before por fe de costa.
Okay, and what's it about?
Well, the author, who goes by Nola, argues that their education system is churning out the wrong kind of fruit.
Interesting.
Oh, and their metaphors, they're so vivid.
I love a good metaphor.
Me too. Nidalama starts by comparing apples and oranges to knowledge and skills.
Okay, classic but effective.
Right. But they use it to highlight how the Nepalese system seems obsessed with producing graduates who are full of apples.
Full of apples.
Yeah, meaning like rote memorization, facts, figures.
Okay, I get it.
But they're lacking the oranges, the practical skills you need to actually thrive in the real world.
So it's about the balance or lack thereof between theoretical knowledge and practical skills.
Exactly. And get this, they compare this mindset to politicians who they say are like shrews with blurry vision, only able to see what's right in front of them.
Wow, that's pretty harsh.
It is. And Lama doesn't hold back. They actually point a finger at what they call the middleman, which is the exam control office and the current exam system.
Interesting.
Yeah, they see these as the villains, almost like a disease, preventing any growth of real knowledge and skills.
So a critique of standardized testing, perhaps.
Exactly. Like they say these high-stakes exams, particularly this thing called the C exam.
Okay, and what's the C?
Oh, it's basically the high-stakes standardized test that every student in Nepal takes at the end of secondary school.
Okay, so a lot riding on it.
Oh, yeah, huge pressure. And Lama basically says this pressure forces teachers and students to just cram information instead of, fostering deeper understanding.
It's a common criticism that standardized tests can narrow the curriculum and encourage a teach-to-the-test mentality.
Yeah, exactly. And for Lama, this is leading to a whole crop of bad fruit, particularly in the political sphere.
Okay, tell me more.
Well, they contrast these success stories of people like Anil Keshri, he was CEO of Noble Bank, and Banu Chaudhary, a big businessman, with the kind of decisions some Nepalese politicians have been making, which they say are short-sighted.
So they're using these figures to exemplify the potential outcomes of different educational approaches.
Right. It's like they're saying, hey, look, here's what happens when you actually prioritize skills and application, and here's what happens when you don't.
It's a compelling argument for sure, using real-world examples to illustrate the impact of education.
Yeah, and Lama is basically saying, we're producing graduates who are great at memorizing, but terrible at problem-solving or critical thinking.
That's a worry.
Right, and that's why they see issues with leadership and decision-making happening.
So they're linking the flaws in the education system to broader societal problems.
Exactly. They even have this really interesting contrast between the farmer, which is the teacher, and the land, which are the educational institutions.
Oh, okay, I like where this is going.
To highlight just how important it is to actually empower educators.
Makes sense.
Yeah, like give teachers the resources and freedom they need to really nurture individual growth.
Right, rather than being forced into this rigid, standardized model.
Exactly. That's what Lama is all about.
Yeah.
Moving away from one-size-fits-all education.
That aligns with a lot of progressive educational philosophies that emphasize personalized learning and teacher autonomy.
Right. And then Lama actually takes issue with the fact that a lot of the educational materials in Nepal, they feel imported, like not really serving the true needs of students.
Interesting.
Yeah. And speaking of imported, they have this other really striking image later on.
Oh.
They compare the exam control office to a middleman who's just importing Indian tomatoes.
Indian tomatoes.
Yeah. As in the education being provided is somehow foreign.
I see. Like it's not truly nourishing or adapted to the local context.
Exactly. It's like trying to grow a plant in the wrong soil, It might look okay on the surface, but
it's not sustainable in the long run.
Right. And this whole debate, it gets really personal for Lama because they talk about their own family.
Oh.
Yeah. About how their wife feels all this pressure to make sure their son succeeds in these high-stakes exams.
I can only imagine.
It really highlights how these abstract debates about education, they have really real consequences for families. you know?
Absolutely. It's not just theoretical. It's about people's lives and futures.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's like this system is forcing everyone to grow the same kind of fruit, regardless of their potential.
That's a powerful image.
Right. And I think that's the heart of Nlama's critique. It's not just complaining. They're offering a different vision.
And what is that vision?
Something more individualized, more holistic, more empowering. Like, hey, we can do better than this.
Yeah, it's a vision that resonates with a lot of educators and reformers around the world who are pushing for a more human-centered approach to learning.
And it all leads to this incredibly passionate plea for change.
Oh.
And Lama is basically saying, hey, get rid of the middleman, empower the teachers, and focus on producing graduates who can actually contribute to society in a meaningful way.
It's a bold call to action.
It is, and it really makes you wonder, what kind of fruit is your education system producing?
That's a question worth pondering for sure, because the quality of our education systems reflects the values we hold as a society.
And what's so interesting is Nlama isn't just criticizing, they're offering this really compelling alternative.
It's not just a takedown, it's a proposal for something better.
Exactly. So let's delve deeper into some of those specific solutions that they propose.
I'm curious to hear more. What kind of changes do they advocate for?
Well, one of the big ones is completely dismantling the exam control office.
Wow, that's a radical idea.
It is. They see it as this bureaucratic bottleneck that's just stifling any innovation.
So it's not just about getting rid of a building, it's about changing the whole mindset.
Exactly. Shifting the focus from standardized tests to something more, well, holistic.
Right, something that captures the complexity of learning in a more authentic way.
Yeah, Nlama basically says, let's stop obsessing over exam scores and start recognizing the diverse talents within each student.
It's about valuing the whole person, not just their ability to perform on a test.
And that's where empowering teachers comes in.
Okay, I'm listening.
Nlama believes teachers should have the freedom to design their own curriculums.
So more teacher autonomy.
Right. Choose their own teaching methods, really tailor their approach to their students.
It's about trusting teachers as professionals and giving them the space to be creative and responsive to their students' needs.
And it's about recognizing that teachers, they're not just deliverers of content, they're mentors.
They're guides, facilitators.
Exactly. And Nlama uses this analogy of a garden.
I like this one.
Where each student is like a unique seedling with different needs.
Okay, and the teacher is the gardener.
Right. Nurturing those seedlings, providing the right conditions for each one to thrive.
I love that. It's about creating a learning environment where diversity is celebrated.
And where every student has the chance to, well, bear their own unique fruit.
And that brings us back to this idea of empowering teachers.
Exactly, because ultimately it's the teachers who are on the front lines.
Working directly with the students, shaping the future of education.
And they're the ones who can bridge the gap between theory and practice, between global models and the local context.
Right. They can take those big ideas and make them work in the real world.
And they can cultivate that love of learning, that passion for knowledge.
And that sense of responsibility to make a positive difference.
So as we continue this deep dive into Nlama's vision, let's keep this idea of empowerment at the forefront of our minds.
Empowerment of teachers, empowerment of students, and ultimately empowerment of a nation to shape its own destiny through education.
Love that.
It's an inspiring vision.
It really is. And you know what? Nlama does such a good job of connecting this idea of empowerment back to their fruit metaphor.
Oh, how so?
Well, they argue that true empowerment leads to good fruit.
To good fruit. Meaning
graduates who aren't just full of facts, but are actually skilled, adaptable, and ready to contribute.
So they have the knowledge and the ability to apply it.
Exactly. It's like simply stuffing students full of information, it's not enough.
Right. You have to create an environment where they can use that knowledge, solve problems, develop those crucial skills for life.
And for Nlama, those skills, they're tied to civic responsibility.
Oh, that's interesting.
Like, it's not just about individual achievement, but about using your skills to benefit the community, the country.
So education as a means of creating engaged citizens.
Yeah, and they even suggest that the current system is actually hindering that, by fostering so much competition.
I see. The pressure to succeed individually can overshadow the importance of collective well-being.
And Nlama contrasts that with those examples of good fruit we talked about earlier, like Anil Keshri, Binod Chaudhary, people who have actually used their skills to build things, create jobs.
So they're highlighting individuals who exemplify the kind of positive societal impact they envision.
Right. And then there's the bad fruit.
Oh boy, I have a feeling this isn't going to be pleasant.
It's not. And Lama is pretty scathing in their critique of the bad fruit, especially when it comes to politics.
And what kind of imagery do they use here?
Well, they compare some Nepalese politicians to, get this, shrews.
Shrews.
Yeah, with blurry vision, limited perspective, and also to egrets.
Egrets, the birds.
Yeah, because they only seek worms in shallow water, so it symbolizes, like, a superficial search for wealth.
Wow, and Lama doesn't mince words.
Nope. And it's almost like they're saying these politicians, they're products of this system that rewards conformity over critical thinking.
So it all circles back to the education system and its flaws.
Right. And that focus on rote memorization and passing exams, well, it's no wonder those crucial skills are being neglected.
And Lama sees the exam control office as a big part of the problem.
Absolutely. They see it as this gatekeeper, controlling access to knowledge, limiting teacher freedom.
It's a symbol of that rigid, top-down approach to education that they're fighting against.
And they're so passionate about dismantling it, empowering teachers.
Yeah, giving teachers more autonomy to create those engaging learning experiences we talked about.
Right, moving away from one size fits all.
Recognizing that students have different needs, different learning styles.
Exactly. And Lama is also really adamant that the system needs to be less reliant on those imported models.
Ah, the Indian tomatoes again?
Yep. They're saying those models often just don't translate well.
It's like trying to force the square peg into a round hole.
Totally. And Lama believes Nepal needs its own unique approach to education.
Something rooted in their own culture, history, values.
Exactly. Reclaiming ownership, creating something authentic.
And that means recognizing their own strengths, their own challenges, learning from others, but ultimately charting their own course.
It's about innovation, experimentation, being willing to challenge the status quo.
And empowering teachers to lead the way.
Exactly.
It's a powerful vision, requiring a real shift in mindset.
It does, but it's so exciting, It's putting students and teachers at the heart of everything.
Absolutely. And what makes Lama's writing so compelling is that they go beyond just the system.
Yeah.
They bring in these personal stories, like the one about their wife.
Oh, right, and the pressure she feels over their son's exams.
It really humanizes the whole debate, showing the very real impact on families.
And it makes you think, what are we actually teaching our kids? To be lifelong learners, critical thinkers, or just test takers?
That's the big question, isn't it?
It is. And Lama clearly believes this system isn't nurturing the full potential of students.
And it's creating this culture of anxiety, stress, conformity.
Which is the opposite of what we should be aiming for.
Exactly. We need a more holistic approach, one that values creativity, curiosity, a sense of purpose.
Create environments where students feel supported, encouraged to explore their passions.
Because success isn't just about grades or money, it's about living a fulfilling life.
And that's a vision of education worth fighting for.
It really is.
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, let's remember the power of personal stories.
To show us the human side of these big educational debates.
And let's remember the goal. The goal is to cultivate compassionate, creative, engaged citizens.
Who are ready to make a positive impact on the world.
And Lama gives us so much to think about in terms of how to achieve that, both in Nepal and beyond.
It's a global conversation.
It really is.
So let's continue exploring Lama's vision, because there's a lot more to unpack here.
There is. They get really specific about what needs to change.
I'm ready to hear it.
Okay, well, first, they talk about the importance of.
It's interesting how Lama connects this idea of empowerment back to their central metaphor of fruit. They argue that true empowerment, well, it leads to the cultivation of good fruit.
Okay, good fruit. Meaning?
Graduates who are not just knowledgeable, but also skilled, adaptable, and ready to contribute to society.
Right, so they have the knowledge, ADD, the ability to actually use it.
Exactly. It's like simply stuffing students with facts and figures. It's just not enough.
You got to be able to do something with it.
Precisely. You need to create an environment where they can use that knowledge, solve problems, develop those essential skills.
The skills you need for life, not just for tests.
Exactly. And for Lama, those skills, they seem inextricably linked to a sense of civic responsibility.
Oh, interesting. So it's not just about personal success.
Right. It's about using those skills to benefit the community, the country as a whole.
Education for the greater good.
Precisely. And they even suggest that the current system, well, it's actually hindering that sense of responsibility.
Really? How so?
Well, they argue that all this pressure to succeed in these high-stakes exams...
I see where you're going with this.
It can create a generation of students who are more focused on individual achievement than on the well-being of the community.
It's like everyone's just looking out for themselves.
In a way, yes. And Lama contrasts that with the examples of good fruit they highlight earlier.
Oh, right, like Anil Keshri and Binod Chaudhary?
Exactly. Those individuals who have used their skills and knowledge to build successful businesses contribute to the economy.
So they're showcasing the kind of positive impact they envision.
Precisely. And then there's the bad fruit.
Uh-oh, I have a feeling this is where the gloves come off.
You could say that. And Lama doesn't hold back in their critique of what they see as bad fruit, particularly when it comes to the political sphere.
And what kind of imagery do they use here? Give me the juicy details.
Well, they compare some Nepalese politicians to shrews.
Shrews? Okay, I'm not sure I see the connection.
They focus on shrews having blurry vision and a limited perspective.
Ah, okay, so short-sighted, unable to see the bigger picture.
Exactly. And they also compare them to egrets.
Egrets, the birds.
Yes. Because egrets, they only seek worms in shallow water.
So it symbolizes a superficial search for wealth, I guess.
Precisely. They're not looking for deep, lasting solutions.
Wow. And Lama really goes for the jugular with these metaphors.
They do. And it's almost like they're suggesting that these politicians, they're products of a system that rewards conformity over critical thinking.
So it circles back to the education system again.
Exactly. If the focus is solely on memorization and passing exams,
then it's no surprise those critical thinking skills, the ethical decision-making, it gets neglected.
And Lama sees the exam control office as a big part of that problem.
Right. That gatekeeper's controlling access to knowledge, limiting what teachers can do.
And they're really passionate about dismantling this system, about empowering teachers.
Giving teachers the freedom to design their own curriculums, choose their teaching methods.
Moving away from that one-size-fits-all model.
Recognizing that students learn in different ways, have different goals.
And Lama also emphasizes the need to move away from relying so heavily on imported educational models.
Ah, yes, the Indian tomatoes.
Exactly. They argue that those models often just don't translate well to the Nepalese context.
Different cultures, different needs.
Precisely. It's like trying to force a square peg into a round hole. It just doesn't work.
You got to find what fits.
And then Lama believes Nepal needs to develop its own unique approach to education.
Something that's truly theirs.
Rooted in their own culture, history, and values.
Reclaiming ownership of their education system.
And that requires a deep understanding of their strengths, their challenges.
Learning from others, but ultimately choosing their own path.
Embracing innovation, experimentation, challenging the status quo.
And having teachers lead the way.
Because they are the ones who can truly bring about this transformation.
It's a really powerful vision, but it requires a real shift in mindset.
It does, a willingness to embrace new ideas, to prioritize students and teachers.
And Lama does such a great job of bringing this vision to life through personal stories, like the one about their wife and the pressure she feels over their son's exams.
That story really highlights the human impact of these big educational debates.
It shows that these aren't just abstract ideas. They have real consequences for families.
And it raises those big questions about what we're really teaching our children.
Are we preparing them for life or just for exams?
Are we nurturing their full potential or just focusing on narrow measures of achievement?
And Lama clearly believes that the current system is failing to nurture the full potential of students.
And they're calling for a more holistic, human-centered approach.
One that values creativity, curiosity, collaboration,
and a sense of purpose.
Creating learning environments where students feel supported, encouraged to explore.
Because success isn't just about grades or a paycheck. It's about living a fulfilling life that aligns with your values.
And that's a vision of education that we can all get behind.
Absolutely. It's a vision worth striving for.
It's funny, we started talking about fake fruit, and now I'm actually craving a real fruit salad.
I know, right?
Yeah.
And Lama's metaphors really stick with you.
They do. But beyond that, what I find really striking is how they combine that sharp critique with this genuine hope, you know?
Yeah, it's not just doom and gloom.
Right, like things can change, and they actually offer some real ideas for how to do it.
It's a refreshing change from just complaining about the problem.
Totally. So for Lama, it all comes down to shifting away from standardized testing.
Moving towards something more holistic.
Right, an approach that values each student's individual growth and development.
And creating a system that produces graduates who are equipped to deal with those complex challenges facing Nepal.
Oh yeah, they even connect the state of education to the leadership in the country.
It's like they're saying, if you want better leaders, you need a better education system.
Yeah, one that teaches critical thinking, problem solving, civic responsibility, all that.
And it starts with empowering teachers.
Absolutely. Give teachers the freedom to design their own curriculums, their own teaching methods.
Trust them as the professionals they are.
And move away from this one-size-fits-all model that just doesn't work.
It's about recognizing that different students have different needs, different aspirations.
Right. And then Lama is really pushing for a system that's designed for the Nepalese people.
Not just copying models from other countries.
Yeah. Remember that Indian tomatoes metaphor?
Yeah, that was a good one.
It's like just importing ideas without thinking about the context. It can backfire.
You can't just take something and expect it to work the same way somewhere else.
Exactly. And then Lama goes even further,
Ah.
They propose getting rid of the exam control office altogether.
Wow. That's a bold move.
It is. But it shows just how frustrated they are with the way testing is dominating everything.
It's like they're saying, let's clear the slate and start fresh.
Yeah. And they have a clear idea of what they want to see instead, like fostering critical thinking, collaboration,
Building a love of learning.
creating a system where teachers are respected, given autonomy.
True partners in this whole process.
Exactly. And it's such a beautiful vision. Even though it's specific to Nepal, there's so much we can take from it.
It's a reminder that education is about so much more than just grades or jobs.
It's about shaping who we are, who we want to be in the world.
Cultivating compassion, creativity, the ability to make a difference.
And that's what I find so inspiring about Indra Lama's blog. It's a call to action, not just for Nepal, but for all of us.
For anyone who believes in the power of education to create positive change.
And it leaves us with a really powerful question.
What's that?
What kind of fruit is your education system producing?
That's a question worth considering.
It is, because we all have a role to play in shaping the future of education.
And Lama reminds us that we have the power to choose what kind of fruit we want to grow.
And that's where we'll leave our deep dive for today. Thanks for joining us on this journey to Nepal.
It's been a pleasure exploring these ideas with you.
And we hope you'll continue to think about the questions we've raised, because the future of education, well, it really is in our hands